came from Miami or Philly, hitchhiked away across the USA.
To millions, this is the song that will always define Lou Reed. To many others, though, he was quite simply the inspiration to generations of musicians.
Hey, babe, you take a walk on the wild side.
Whether it's indie, punk, new wave or alternative rock, Lou Reed is widely credited with inventing it, his music covered by a catalogue of the greats.
It's impossible to overstate his influence on music. I mean, he's probably the greatest lyricist of all time. I mean, he made rock and roll literate. When he arrived at Trident Studio, you know, he was physically frail, but I mean, his mind was absolutely razor sharp. You know, there was no sort of disguising his genius there.
He was a giant, first as the leader of the cult band Velvet Underground in the 1960s. It was once said that their first album sold 30,000 copies, and every one of those 30,000 people probably started a band. His solo years were no less inspirational. Chart hits were rare.
Just a perfect day.
But if he didn't have the commercial success of contemporaries like the Beatles and Bob Dylan, he did much to change the culture of popular music, broadening it to the wider arts, famously with figures like Andy Warhol, who he continued to credit.
Everything I do is from the outside, and if it hadn't been for Andy, who knows whether would have had a chance to do anything. So I think I owe everything to Mr. Warhol. Thanks.
The gaunt features and cold, hard stare were iconic, cynical and inspirational, his songs packed with emotion and power. The suburban son of an accountant, he had the image of an outlaw, but it didn't stop him being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and even performing at the White House. Twitter has carried tributes from contemporaries and fans, Iggy Pop calling the news devastating. Reed had undergone a life-saving liver transplant earlier this year. He died from a related illness at his home, and music said goodbye to the punk poet of rock and roll. Greg Milam, Sky News, Los Angeles.